So hopefully we can maybe get this thing done for you guys. Well, basically I got the fender pan off for you, and I'm going to go over kind of everything that I did to it. So maybe some of you guys might want to make your own. Right, I know, that's completely unrealistic. It's hard enough finding a Massey Ferguson hydro as it is, let alone trying to find just the trans to swap into a 110. Yeah, it's of its own course in itself, but in all fairness, I am going to try to show you in this video of what I did to make this happen, and if honestly any of you legit want to try and do this yourself, here's the things that I kind of recommend on it. Basically, guys, I gotta start with kind of the storyline on this. Maybe I could do this when I get it done, but in 1967, 1968 era, Deere was converting over to square fender style. And as they were doing that, they were doing a lot of testing and development of other things and certain models, features, ideas that all the other brands were doing. And that's where this idea stemmed, but that's, in my firm belief, is where they messed up, because they were trying to be better than the idea itself. Honestly, the first idea of the 120, the prototype 120, was trying to make a hydro 110 or 112. And that's what they kind of just should have stuck to, was just a hydro 112, not completely make a different model, which obviously they made a hydraulic lift. And I think that was the problem. Let me explain it this way, and don't mark me as I'm not a Cub expert kind of deal. I obviously, Deere is my thing, but Cub, Ford, Boland's, Massey Ferguson, well, it was Ford Jacobson and all that, but Massey Ferguson and who knows else. Basically what they did on all of their 12-horse tractors, all of them, was you could get it in geared or hydro. And I know on the Cubs, it was like the even numbers were geared, odd numbers were hydro, and they did it through all the model numbers. I get that. But specifically, 12 horses on every scale was hydro trans or geared trans. You couldn't get a 10 in a geared on a Jacobson, Ford, Moline, whatever. And then the 14 horse was only hydro. You couldn't get the geared. So it kind of swung both ways, that the 12 was the crossover, I'm going to call it. And the number one thing that I noticed on them that Deere tried doing better than everybody was they only wanted a hydraulic lift. If you know, every single one of those tractors came only manual lift. I get the Cubs optional hydraulic lift, you could add it on the stipulations. Again, I know there's different rules in litigation, but I'm just saying generically against all other brands, they only came with manual lift, and Deere tried doing hydraulic. That's where I think they messed up. If they honestly just did a bare bones 112 hydro manual lift, which you could get it in a hydraulic lift. In 67, 68, they literally had a engine mounted pump circulation. It was just a different system. But you could put it up. I mean, like they did in the later 200 series. They literally made a kit. You just remove this side panel and you could swap on hydraulic lift or electric lift or still keep the manual. That way they could just build all the tractors from the factory manual lift. But if somebody ordered it, they could just pull a kit off the shelf, slap it on at the dealership. Any guy in the dealership could do it, any mechanic. I know they didn't have that idea in 68 yet, but you got to keep the idea there. If you really wanted hydraulic lift on this, just mount it on the motor. Don't pull it from the trans. So that's kind of where I believe the idea stemmed from Deere to make this, is because the competition had a crossover and they worked too hard of just trying to make this its own tractor. Obviously in 70 they created the 120 and it was just a cheaper version of the 140. So that made no point. If you legit created a hydro 112 and stuck to it, I bet it would have been a pretty good tractor, because it still had a lesser price point of a 110 or 112, but it didn't cost as much as a 140 either. And you could still use all your 110, 112 attachments, even on the round fender. Remember that, they had the adapter on the front of these, so you could, if you bought a round fender and you were looking to upgrade, but you had all the attachments still, everything would still intertwine. You wouldn't have to rebuy an entire thing, but you wanted a hydro trans instead of a gear. That's my honest opinion. You guys can stem and make your own, but otherwise I think this would be a success, and I kind of like it. Biggest thing that you guys are probably stipulating on, I bet it drives completely weird. Honestly, no. To me, it doesn't drive any different than a 140. I'm dead serious. I mean, the hoods are exactly the same, they look the same. I used the 140 dash, and it's just got the hydro lever and it's hydro in the rear. I mean, it's, yeah, the attachment hookup, I guess, is going to be a little different because it's all still 110, and the engine's still 110, and it has a clutch pedal, but it doesn't really have brakes. I don't see it particularly being special like that. So let's get down to the bare bones of this, of what did I do. Basically, this is a 110 chassis, 110 10 horse chassis. I think it's a 71, 72 maybe. That way I could still use a single pedal, which was in the original prototype picture. It was a single pedal and 3/4 inch spindles and all that jazz. Obviously the original prototype actually used a 12 horse. I am not squeezing a 12 horse in there. That's not happening. So we're going to incorporate the 10 and make it look like it. I had a halfway decent 112 hood, so that's why that slapped on there. And then I mounted a 140 dash just because it was easier that it already had the notch out for this, and also the lineup for the bushing and the pivot and everything for this, so that it actually worked normal. Now all I had to do was down here, had to cut this out for the PTO arm, and the parking brake is also there on a 110 versus there on a 140. So that's how that came to be. I got a new key switch in there. We don't obviously need the electric PTO anymore. Sorry, right there. Open this up. Probably could. So new wiring and all that jazz down in there of my own fashion critiquing. Biggest thing I wanted to point out to you guys was the steering columns on a 140 is actually steeper. So I had to cut out the 140 steering mount bracket and re-weld back in the 110 steering mount bracket because it wasn't as steep. That way the steering wheel could actually mount there where it belongs. I had to do a couple other miscellaneous side holes, like to reach the pivot for the variator, which we did a full variator delete. I'll just swing it under here and show you. Which is pretty much the rear drive pulleys on the 39 and 47 inch deck. Actually uses the same bearing assembly as the variator. So if you're looking to do a variator delete, just grab a scrap deck, pull that drive double pulley off, and it lines right in there perfectly if that's what you're looking to do. We used a Massey Ferguson 12 Hydro. I used that specifically because the axle tubes are actually identical. See how they bolt up to the frame? Literally identical to a 110. Now the only difference here was the mounting bolts are pitched back. So I had to completely re-groove, redesign, re-engineer, and cut back and relocate those mounting brackets right there. I had to relocate them back. Which was in its own ability to make sure that these sat exactly where they needed to be. So that was its own fun. I didn't have the original swash plate here to control for the hydro, which, let me move the 140 hydro here. You can see works and functions as it should. So I actually had my dad, we got hold of an original one that I took out of my tractor, but I didn't want to make the tractor useless, so I just had my dad copy one, which was not fun to do. These are very difficult to make, so he was pretty good at that. It did have a reservoir. I relocated it to here, which, fun fact, this is not to be filled all the way up in. This is just an ability to fill the trans, because I overfilled this, and it actually put fluid higher than this top seal here. Sorry, mind the focus. Top seal in there, so then it all leaked down. Whatever. I don't know if that seal's now blown or what. I guess it kind of still leaks. Either way. To make the hydraulic lift work in itself, I actually had to hunt down a normal 110 hydraulic lift unit for the cylinder, because it turns out a 300 series cylinder is about an inch too long to fit down in there. So I had to hunt down a specific 110 lift cylinder to put in there, remake the lines, and work it through. I mounted a H1 valve block out of a 120 or H1 140. I just took the whole bracket assembly that was in a 140, cut it out, re-welded it in here, and put the valve block down in there. You can see. And then I had to have all these lines remade and plumbed, and it took a lot to try and figure out where the ports are in here. Now let me specify, because all of these tractors, there were 12-4s, came with manual lift. None of them are plumbed for the valve body on here to have auxiliary power ports. They are not plumbed for it. That is the biggest problem. So this is actually pulling power beyond from the reverse portion of the transmission. That makes the reversing weaker. It took a lot of the power away. So simple fix, all I had to do was just grab this and deadhead the cylinder whichever direction it needs to be, and then I'll regain full power on the reverse side, which kind of sucks, but I'd rather lose reverse than forward. You're obviously going to use forward a lot more. You don't really need to be grabbing on this to deadhead it everywhere just to be driving forward. It's kind of stupid. So that was the biggest problem with this trans. So it is what it is. You know, we've had to cut a lot off. I had to cut this off, relocate the spring, made my own tensioner here, which isn't great, but you know, it's there. Cut the hole here, notch up there. You know, just a lot of functionality to make this reach up to there where it belongs and fit around the variator, because that secondary shaft is right in the way. But then we had to cut that tab off and all sorts of things. And the number one problem that I had on this for a delay was making the brakes actually work, which I didn't really need to, because it's a hydro. You don't necessarily need brakes on a hydro, obviously. But I wanted the clutch actually functions. Clutch pedal actually physically functions. You see the tensioner. So that it actually will disengage from the motor as a safety precaution, as it's supposed to. I'm like, well, I'm already that far in. I hunted down a couple of different style push-pull cables, and with a lot of modification to get them to work where they need to. Made a mounting bracket here, mounting bracket down there. You can see my bolt. And a whole lot of finagling and some custom lathe work to get the brake to actually function as it should. Now, I'm pretty proud of myself on that fact that I did get the brake to actually work. That means everything on this 100% works, and it's fantastic that it does. Except for rear lift. I know. In the prototype picture, it actually shows that it has rear lift. I'm like, well, I don't know what trans they use. There's no pictures of the transmission. So I'd like to know how they made that work. Because I literally had to cut the tab off for the rear lift. Actually, that might have been for the front lift, honestly. That tab was for the front lift. Way up in there somewhere, which is where one of those hydraulic hoses actually goes through, is in the path of the rear lift. So that's where that would go. Otherwise, I thought of another maybe push-pull cable, reach here to here, but I don't really care. It's more for looks than it is functionality. I get the reservoirs in the way, but we had to keep her below the height of the fender deck. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. We got her to bolt in the factory locations. Got an original hitch looking on it. a lot of finagling and a lot of legwork to make all this work, which, again, a 140 dash, do not recommend using. I would personally modify the 110 dash if I had to do this over again, because I'd say clearance on that bolt down there for that gas tank is very minimal. Because I believe the whole thing sits forward good half an inch. So it's very, very tight on certain things. But that is my personal opinion. That is my rundown on this. Biggest thing for me was how that pan sits, that I was hoping it would stay within the width of the tire like that. Because I would like to put a deck under this, just for fun. I really want to put a deck under it, try and mow with it. I mean, I got mostly flat ground here anyway. So I wanted to make sure that it clearanced for when the deck lifts and make sure everything works as it's supposed to. So this has actually changed a little bit. I'm not letting them in the way of it. I got hubcaps on everything. We even changed the tires closer to the original picture, which were the original Goodyear's Terra Turfs style, and that's on all four corners of it. We slapped the DAP underneath it because I'm actually going to try to use this to mow with. Another big one, flywheel shroud here. We actually cut down another one and made it look like more the original one. It was round style. I'm just too lazy that I don't feel like taking the tins off the motor and painting them green in this original photo. But last thing to really do is swap out the 68 style hood supports, as it's got the 70 and up quick catch hood. So we'd like to put later style and afford like a Deere emblem on the front of it. But for the most part, it's done for my needs, my ideas, and it'll be ready to go to its new home, honestly. I'm going to pass this off on to the next guy that's really going to nitpick this and make it as close to the original photo as possible from here on. I guess the other big announcement is I'm taking this all the way out to Portage Garden Tractor Daze with me. So catch me out in Wisconsin here this July. I'll be out there with a whole ton of friends, and we'll be there having a great time, a bunch of us, for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, as much as I can be. You know, it's 14 hours one way, guys, so I'm going to try to be there all day Friday and probably Saturday morning. Hopefully you guys can come out, visit me, see everything. Ben, Mitchell, Justin, Evan, a whole ton of us are going to be there. So come hang out with us. We're going to have a grand old time. We're going to be bringing this and we're going to have some fun driving around with it. So guys and gals, basically, I'm not going to be the only one and the other tractor enthusiasts at Portage this year. We will, we've got another one in the making. So, and it's a she. Yeah, I know. Now I got to paint all my tractors pink. See how that is. But she will hopefully be coming along for the show, so you can come hang out with her. And we'll use that one as another excuse to buy more tractors.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes, more tractors.
No.
Well, she wants a tractor here, and then needs another tractor, and another.
No.
Got to keep the hobby alive somehow. But yeah, I'm excited. We're excited to welcome in the new addition to the family and future tractor enthusiasts to go with us on all of our road trips and be part of the hobby. So you'll be seeing her on the channel probably. I'm gonna try to get more onto YouTube. As always, I say that, but projects are a little slow, hard here or there to keep up with lately. I guess as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, share this with your friends, share the hobby. You know, I'm trying to work as hard as I can on getting custom projects like this done and others. We got a long list of them to do, a lot of little things to get done. We'll try to video them all. Keep in touch, will you? Happy tractoring.